She's going to be doing a quick overview of the Resolve grant to let us know everything we need to know about the application, and also here to answer any questions that you may have. Give a round of applause.
More about like how to do it if you're an organization that doesn't know really how to structure a grant or apply for a community-based grant. Today I'll give you a couple pointers about that, but also looking forward to hear some of y'all challenges, and at the end we'll figure out if you are eligible to apply for our grant. So I'll get started with our presentation here. So how many people have checked in and looked at the application already or the website? So kind of, anybody still trying to figure out they're eligible to apply? Okay. Never did anything, never did before. Okay, well, we want to do it. It doesn't matter where you are in the journey, I feel like you'll get something from this presentation. So, one thing I'll start by saying is a lot of people, well, let me back up. Let me tell you guys what I do. So I am the director for the New Orleans Musical Collaborative. What we do in the New Orleans Musical Collaborative is run organizations that are already doing intervention-based work when it comes to behavioral health, violence, and resilience in the community. So projects that we funded previously, if you guys take a look at our website, go to unitedwayco.org/HC/resolve. You'll be able to click through our names and all the work we've done so far. But some organizations that we've granted out so far, you guys may know the Ride, Reset at Sunset, Songwood District, Boys Town, New Orleans, Blackwood herself. It's a ton of other organizations, Impact Connections. I think had different programs that they work for throughout the year. So some people again work for initiatives to expand and to go through physical activity, right? So in the route one of our initiatives that expand comes to the mental health field in general, I always tell people to be as optimistic. So most programs that exist probably have something to do with mental or behavioral health. Again, it's all about how creative you use your work. So when applying for any grant, a lot of times they'll give you the general structure, they'll give you questions to answer, most times they'll cap you off. For our grant specifically, we cap you off at 250 words for a couple sections throughout the grant. I'll go through some of those questions a little later in my deck. In addition to the question piece, there's a blanket piece, and there's also a statement that talks about the organization as it currently set up. So 9 times out of 10, you can have a program that works really well. You just have to have a fiscal sponsor, which is about right? We asked a lot about, not a lot, but enough about those organizations to get a better idea as to who's funding them, why they're funding, how much revenue comes in each month, each year, and then also the impact they have on the community. So keep that in mind when you're applying for any grants. I'm a researcher, so I always lead with the research component. As long as you have some feasible data that you're collecting, whether that be from people coming to your grants and taking a post survey, or prior to coming, why are they coming, what are they looking to get out of their programming. Those are like 2 very essential pieces to applying for any grant, especially through the United Way. You kind of want to see who you're. So one major tip for the budget is to always keep your personnel costs under 30% of your budget, right? So some people are like, I have a budget for me, I don't know where to start. 9 times out of 10, you have a program that has already existed, whether you're funding it out of pocket or it's something you got some seed money to do. You've already done a budget. You just don't know it, right? So when it comes to labor, when it comes to how much the program costs, whether that be food, supplies, tablecloths, pens, stickers, name tags, all of that is considered supplies when it comes to events. Personnel is anybody that is getting paid for doing the work, right? So keeping in mind, our grant is up to $15,000 this year. Previously it was $25,000. But in order for us to see what organizations to see what they're doing, we got down the budget a little bit when it comes to our maximum award. But again, it's so that we are able to supply additional funding for more organizations than we did before. So keeping your budget between 30% of your budget, keep your budget 30% or under when it comes to personnel is super important, because we want to see that most of the money that we're seeing you guys is going directly to the programming, right? So if we see like, hey, this program's applying, but their budget is 70% personnel and 20% or 30% something else, it kind of takes away from the integrity of the program, right? It's more like we're funding salaries and not program. Unless your program operates from an individual, right? So we have a council-based program or some type of person-to-person service, and your budget reflects that. That's an exception, okay? But those are one of the major things that people get eliminated from funding more, having a very high budget for personnel and not even leaders, right?
So I had an idea. I wanted to partner with a mental health nonprofit and basically provide, say, free therapy services or pay what you want therapy services. Would that be an example of like it being okay to pay personnel, like you just described?
Yes, that would be okay. What you would have to document though is how many people are you funding through that budget? What is the level of service that's taking place? So like how frequently is this person coming? How many people are you plan to serve within that time period? Or with that amount of dollars, like is it, I'm going to set aside $5,000 for the month of May and give free services for 3 days a week. I know that you guys are seeking money to 3 or 4 therapists to have maybe 30 minutes to hour sessions, right? Like that level of detail is needed there if your budget was to look more on the personnel side than on the program side. So I hope that anybody has any questions about that now?
Can a 501c3 be the fiscal sponsor for more than one recipient?
That I can get more clarity on for you. I don't think it matters as long as the program are different. Right. If you have 2 programs that are pretty similar, 9 times out of 10, they might raise a red flag there again. We understand that there's a lot of programs and not a lot of nonprofits to sponsor, but also going through the process of making sure this nonprofit is a valid fiscal sponsor. They don't have any, they're not in bad standing with the state or anything like that. Like those are processes I would go through with them just to make sure. But I don't think also one. So that is totally fine as a university. You guys are not, so that's, usually we don't have problems with that. But again, as long as the program is really diverse, it makes it a better opportunity. But 9 times out of 10, you have 2 programs that are about the same as sponsor. The likelihood of getting both of them from both programs is kind of slim. Just for integrity purposes. So whichever program you win, that you win is.
So what you're saying is that the programs are similar, the fiscal sponsors may be different. But if they're very, very different, it would probably
But I would definitely double check. Yes. It is a possibility that some people have already having every single applicant that's coming through, kind of break them up based on what you're writing for. But nevertheless, there probably is somebody who's physically sponsored organizations, but totally different. But I follow up to make sure and double check things. I don't want to So I'll follow up there. Next thing that I usually talk to people about is really the question and answer component, because that is usually the part that sets a lot of people up, right? Some people have really good programming, but they're not really good with articulating exactly what they're doing, and then also capturing the metrics, right? So basic questions are usually like, give me some background about the organization. What's the mission statement? What's the vision statement? What's the purpose of the organization? What do you guys aim to do with the funding that we are allocated to y'all, or y'all are asking or requesting from us? And then also, what is the outcome that you intend after giving funds into the program, right? So all of that is usually captured within that background section. 49 way it works specifically with challenge population. I will send over Kwame Terra report. So I don't know if you have a list of everybody that's attended today, but the Alice report captures a lot of data that we've done throughout the state of Louisiana, but more specifically, we have a result campaign report that we conducted between 2023 and 2024, which really assesses the landscape of mental and behavioral health. So you guys will be able to pull some important data from those 2 evaluation reports that'll help you fill out some of the parts in your application, right? So like we asked what target neighborhoods you got to focus on. So Treme, Lower Ninth Ward, New Orleans East, those are the specific areas we're looking for you to like state. And then also be able to go into that report and find out what populations are most affected, what the populations say within these surveys and within the interviews they did in 2023, 2024, and then also say, hey, people requested this service, and my service or my program relates to this population in X, Y, Z way, right? Does that make sense? Again, it also is storytelling. So you have to think about if I were, and to give you guys a little context, most of the people scoring these applications are persons of color. Some of them are not, but for the most part, they are persons of color. So we are really interested in seeing the diversity of programs and also seeing different organizations mentioned before, right? So we know the common people, right? We know we said Sunset, we know they can ride, they got Black Women, so they got funding from us already, right? So we're very familiar with their programming. But other programs that may exist that may be doing some of the same work, we're not as familiar with. So we want you to tell the story in the most great way possible. When doing that, it is helpful to use personas sometimes, right? Like if you've never run this program, this is a pilot program, use a persona type of situation. Persona type of situation being, hey, my name is Jim, I'm looking for mental health services. I came across, or I see a flyer in the community on White Road about a yoga event, right? And this yoga event is supposed to have a breathing session, and the therapist is supposed to lead some type of meditation or talk session within it. That is the type of information that builds up to telling your story about the organization, right? So you can take that easy persona and kind of say, hey, well, I'm expecting at least 50 people to come to my sessions within the course of 3 months. I'm expecting to get 25 of those people referred out to therapists, or 25 of those people referred out to community-based interventions. And hopefully by the end of that program, 20 people completed in totality, and they're able to tell another person and refer them into our program. So that's kind of like the evolution we're looking for when you're telling your story throughout this grant process. But nevertheless, the background is the meat of the application. Who are you? What do you do? Who do you serve? Why do you serve them? What do you do? So those are kind of the basic questions. The purpose of the project. That is also another section in which people tend to have challenge with. 2 of these sections are 500 words capped out. So the background gives the most information about the impact that you'll make with your program that you're writing. Within that, also, you want to include things like what community partners will you work with, right? If you're going to work with community partners, what will everybody do? What's the role of everybody that's included in this collaboration or this grant or this project that you're writing for? Within that, also, you want to include how you measure the metrics, right? So you want to have some hard and soft goals for yourself through the project. Even if you haven't thought about them yet, this is a good time to think about it before you submit your application. What am I looking to get from these projects, right? Like, what am I wanting my project to yield at the end, right? So like I have 25 people at the end utilizing our services and have a strong referral network, and or I plan to mentor 100 youth within this man year, right? How do you capture that? Who's doing that data collection? Are you going to do surveys? Are you going to do focus groups? Are you going to do interviews at the end? That's the information that we want to capture within the project purpose. I know it sounds like a lot, but again, you are being very intentional with saying, hey, this is happening, this is how I'm measuring it, this is the outcome that I'm looking for. Keep it within that 500 word cap, and you're good to go. Next section that people tend to struggle with is the community needs section. That's where I refer to that resolve evaluation report from 2023-2024. We spent a lot of money to do this assessment, to collect this data so that people are able to apply to our grants and use data-specific information for the population that they're trying to target, right? Nobody is probably going to give you money if you have a project that you just came up with today, and you're like, hey, I want to do this project, it's going to cost me about $15,000. I don't really know how I'm going to measure it, I don't really know the population I'm really going to serve, I don't really know where it's going to happen at, but I just have this big idea. We're not in this, right? It's like, that's not what our goal is. Our goal is to get programs that have the potential to grow and expand, but also serving the average population and folks that don't meet the average threshold, which is usually folks who are on Medicaid or something similar, some governmental assistance program, right? And also ALICE, I don't know if I know what ALICE stands for. ALICE stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employee Individuals. So, I don't know about y'all, but a lot of us fit into that category, right? So we have a job, we have an income, but our daily needs are not being met. And we probably don't have that extra money to go to a yoga session or go get a massage or some therapy, right? Or some therapy. So thinking about groups like that, that's really pretty targeting. And also again, that fall underneath that threshold, which are people that's living in poverty, essentially, or close to poverty. So that is important for our metrics in our data section to understand the community needs. So within our report, you'll see a lot of data. Again, neighborhood-specific data, you'll see individual-specific data, income-related data, as well as other categories in which they break down information for different neighborhoods that we're targeting. Through our Mental Health Collaborative, we have a specific focus on New Orleans East, the Lower Ninth, and the Holy Cross areas. So if that is an area that you have interest in, you're looking at creating programming around that area, that is a big plus for us because we're looking at the areas in the city that need the most help when it comes to behavioral health benefits. And those areas are behavioral health benefits.
So fast.
I'm sorry.
You said New Orleans East, the Lower Ninth, and the
Holy Cross.
Holy Cross. And then earlier you talked about the ALICE population. And you said you said it in reference to the role that evaluation did.
Yeah. So the result evaluation report is for this grant specifically, right? So before we launched our community impact grants, we did a landscape assessment of the current conditions when it comes to mental and behavioral health in New Orleans. We identified some major transportation needs, resource needs, also a lack of therapists in New Orleans East, and a lack of coordinated support in New Orleans East, Holy Cross, and the Lower Ninth Ward. So that's where that report was developed from, but the report is also directly tied to this grant. Right from that report, we released these grants as a solution to the problem that identified in the report. The ALICE data that I'm referring to is the general data collected through United Way. So Resolve is a program that is within the Mental Health Collaborative, which is backed on by United Way, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of complex, but we're like a sub-program throughout United Way that offers these community grants to individuals to do community-based interventions. I'm trying to talk to you. Okay, so questions there. Anything about data community need identified?
So it's very
their programming reaches folks that are in New Orleans, Lower Ninth, and Holy Cross areas, right? People have to travel from those areas to come to your service, or you're like in the Marion, Gentilly area, or September, I'm sorry. It's not going to exclude you from anything. The only thing they actually do once you win the grant is to make sure you have some type of programming in that area, right? So we understand people come from all across the city. It's not a way for us to pinpoint you are in mid-city. We give you a grant, so we only expect you to work with people that's in mid-city, right? We realize that people travel, so there's no restrictions there, if that makes sense. But we do have target focus in the Lower Ninth, Holy Cross universities.
How many trainers have you had?
Last year we had 13. This year, we're not sure how many, based on the volume of applications, it'll kind of determine it. But again, we drop down our award amount so that we can grant more organizations. So there's a high chance there'll be a lot of organizations that get lower grant seed money, like maybe like $5,000, $6,000 to do some work. But we're trying to get, I believe, 15 to 20 recipients this time. But it could be more or it could be less. It just depends on who wants.
Is there a cap on the number of applicants?
No, no cap on that.
You guys will evaluate all applications?
All applications, as long as again we have 501c3 budget completed, and application will be completed before 501c3.
I have a question, first one, like, with her question. So you said, you know, servicing New Orleans area. So if your event is somewhere else that does service those areas, you also need to do an event in one of those areas?
You know, we would like it to, right? But it's not required. The result team will be very diligent in making sure that that is something that you do, or at least you create a metric system to capture where those people are coming from, right? So we have a survey that exists, right? A pre-post survey, you can see what neighborhood you stay in. You can do a drop down list, May, Lower Nine, Holy Cross, like that'll help us capture the data, but it also will, again, speak to the point of our grant, which is to target folks in those areas.
So I'm just learning about this program. Apparently, the deadline is
Thursday.
near. You have a business course, so that by for the next cycle. Go to
And also have an open calendar if y'all are not able to, or you're not able to apply this time and you want to save it for the next time, you're able to book a, no, you're fine. You can book a community meeting with me. So I can have open availability on my calendar to chat with y'all.
How long does it take to do the application?
I would say if you from start to finish, probably about an hour and a half. The only thing that you may need to get from filling the application out to get is the information about the 501c3 status, right? So they ask about board members, they ask about presidents, they ask about how much funds that the nonprofit receives. Even if it doesn't receive any funds or hasn't received funds in a year, they still want to know that it's still this thing. So that's the only thing.
So for you, if it's kind of like too late, how is that?
Y'all wait that part of the
Well, I'm hoping that y'all will allow more than one application.
Yeah.
From the service conference.
Yeah. So question for you, is there a way you can find a department to,
Yeah, I mean,
I think that would help with,
I don't know, I'm one person.
okay.
And I'm making, I thought like, oh, it would be cool, I could go to my show.
Yeah,
Especially because it's like,
I think, yes, that's why I'm saying, too. That's why I'm going to be clear for you, because if it's not something that is, let me ask now. Oh, yeah, I'll just ask now.
That's what we like to see.
No, you're fine.
How you feel?
right? And we don't really look too deep into it. Ebony and Halo are our program director and probably the leader for Resolve. They're really good at telling you what you can spend money on and what you can't spend money on because it is a Samson rate, so it comes from federal government and it's related to substance abuse and this program. So that is like a major component of it. But again, now we have open range to partner with whoever we like, right? So that's a good thing to know. And also, any other universities that want to sponsor someone for a program initiative, that's good for you guys to pass on information for the future. So, we didn't get that answer.
I do have another question. So, you said in, let's see, section, project, section, it says program stated as a measurable objective. Now, is this like based on what we want to see?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so not an actual,
Right.
okay.
But if you have started running your program and you develop some metrics, which outcome that you want to identify, that's a good place to do that.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And then,
Right.
okay, real quick. And then with the neighborhoods, like I see pretty much each section says to list the neighborhoods, so list those specific outlets neighborhoods.
Right. But then again, if you touch all three, it doesn't have to be going on from also in world police, but maybe the neighborhood specifically is important, right? And they ask you multiple times because they want to make sure you're being consistent with what you're saying, right? You have a program that's directly impacting whatever neighborhoods, you want to be sure to keep reiterating that they will serve these neighborhoods because again, our data collection is area specific. We want to see that from our initial assessment, the areas that we've identified as problems are included, and they are included because of X, Y, and Z programs that we've invested in the community that are going to be able to work in whatever capacity, right? So, does that answer your question?
Can't even watch where you walk around.
Can a nonprofit apply and also
It's in the fridge.
So, I'll tell you this. We don't have it in our FAQs, it's free game. I'll say that, right? So, nobody's come to us with that issue. So, technically, yes.
So I guess my question is can my nonprofit, should my nonprofit apply and then also the fiscal sponsor, or would I have better odds if I separate them and have somebody else do the fiscal sponsor?
I think to say yourself that applying as a nonprofit would be better.
And then have someone else do the fiscal sponsor?
No. If you are you're totally fine to apply by yourself.
But I also have another initiative that I like to apply for. So I was going to use my nonprofit to apply for anything for the fiscal sponsor for other initiative. Or if I need to do another nonprofit to do fiscal
You
sponsor.
wouldn't need to change the nonprofit from what they say. You wouldn't need to change the nonprofit. As long as you have a program that you're writing for, that's totally fine. But also, if you have any partners in one initiative versus the other, it would be better to include them in that. Like, say, for instance, you work with another organization, write them in there, making it exclusively different from the first application, gives you a better shot. That's what I'm saying.
Also, one applicant can apply twice to wildly different programs.
Right.
Has anybody ever been awarded multiple in one cycle?
You said what?
Has any individual or any individual entity been awarded multiple?
No.
No.
Now, we do a really good job at trying to do that. So, again, I don't think the fiscal sponsor matters, but the program does, right? So we won't give a program or a nonprofit that has the same program money twice. Does that make sense?
Well, what if like I have one initiative over here and I have one initiative completely different over here?
Yeah, that's what we're fine. So whichever one the scorers most aligned with is the one that will be awarded.
Yeah, but
Exactly,
then
we're
that-
aware of both of them. So if one is mental health and one is violence, will you guys work both? Or
It's a
gonna-
possibility,
But it's never happened.
No, it's never happened, but it is a possibility. But that is a good question. Now that I can take back to our team, say we got to figure that out. But because it's not written out, it wouldn't make sense for them to come up with something outside of what has already been established. So if you did win both, you would vote. That makes sense, right? But again, usually the people that are scoring have no idea what these programs are, or they don't know who you are, right? So if they look vastly different and they both get awarded, they just both get awarded, right? So I hope
But
that
they was that who remembers and whose name and that.
only if the non, they only check the financials of the nonprofit. So that really doesn't but a lot of them are internal United Way programs that touch different areas that are reviewing. So a lot of them don't have anything to do with behavior, let's go violence, those things, right? But, so it's giving us a non-biased look at, you're just reading a request for a proposal. What do you think about this, right? Like, is it strong? Does it fit the criteria on our scoring rubric, or does it not, right? That's pretty much it. So it's a mixture, United Way employees, but also community-based organizations who awarded that sit on our advisory boards, our community steering committees, and things like that. So it'll be a great mix.
And it's one step, and then you choose a smaller number of that?
No, it's just one round, right?
One round,
Yep.
okay.
So after all applications are in, we'll do a review. They'll reach out to you. The only way you get like a second round type of thing is if your program is really strong, but you have a terrible budget, or your program is really strong. No, your budget is really strong, but the burden within your application is lacking a little. Like they'll reach out to you individually and have you resubmit. If that program like gets a really high score, right? And some people make notes. I know I'm very thorough when I review applications because I'll make notes. People want to know like what am I doing wrong? What should I add? What should I take out? Is it missing data, right? So again, the biggest thing I said most people fail on is articulating what they do, how they do it, and the purpose of the project, and then also the community need, capturing the community need, because everybody has programs, but not every program works, right? We want to see if it works, if you have strong partners to make it work, if it hasn't started yet, and if you have started, how much impact have you had since you started, and like, who are you judging? That makes sense.
You said a partner, your conflict of interest is United Way is already a partner.
No, it's just right what program you're partnering with. Because essentially the money's going to you, it's not coming to us, right? And usually we're not going to physically sponsor anybody that's fine for the money. But we do encourage collaboration amongst other organizations that exist. So if you have a nonprofit, and y'all want to co-write this grant together and say, hey, you're handling the program aspect, we're going to handle the personnel aspect. You guys can do that amongst yourself as long as you know who is the sponsor and then how you want to do it. Is that?
Yes,
Perfect. Okay. I just have a few more slides. Again, this is part of the piece that kind of goes into my previous slide. Okay. So some of the barriers, that goes into that meat part of the community meeting section. So identifying some barriers as it relates. I give some examples up here. Our program is designed to inform, designed to inform residents by input, creative living rooms, feeling not in the waiting room, right? So for example, if you are an organization that is doing therapy, right? And you want to create a therapy space that is inclusive for everybody, it touches different people, but it's also a different space. So if I want to use their facility to conduct a community, I don't know, community think tank, a community wellness session, whatever, right? You could identify some barriers that exist, talk about maybe where you're located, how and why being located in whatever space is essential for the population you're trying to serve, which goes back to that neighborhood question, like who are you serving in what areas, right? And then also identify how you can be eliminating the barriers that currently exist when people are trying to find programs similar to yours, or just the simple fact that there's no program that exists like yours. So those are pieces that you can add into that community needs section. Again, pulling from the ALS report, pulling from our result evaluation report, giving some data to give that information a little bit more fluff, right? So you know what you see when you are working with different organizations or different populations, right? It's a common knowledge that a lot of transportation issues exist, right? So if you're somebody that's like, hey, I'm not in this summer program, I'm writing for a portion of the summer program, but I'm also writing for some bus passes, right? It makes sense that you guys are trying to eliminate a barrier of transportation to give people access to mental health, behavioral health, providing intervention services. That's what we're talking about that. Does that make sense? All right, and then another piece that'll go into some of these sections, and I kind of like broke down like what we're asking for, the sustainability piece, right? So I asked before, I mentioned before that we want to know like, have this program we gotten money for? Do you have current partners? Are we getting any in-kind donations and things like that? This is where you list list that, right? So if you're somebody who's sharing space with someone, they're like, hey, I'm gonna offer up this space to you, you write that in as an in-kind donation. I don't pay anything for this space, but if I had to give it a dollar amount, this is how much it would cost, right? That's what we want to know in that budget section. How much money is coming in? Do you have money or do you have in-kind donations? Some people don't have funds, but they have donations like spaces, equipments, bike rentals, for example, which is using it as a ride. So bike rentals was something they had in one of their proposals. Also the staff to ride with proposals on bikes, lights, equipment, things like that. Like sustainability wise, we want to know what does it take you to do this program again and again and again and again, right? As long as you can articulate that very well in your budget, but also within that programming component, you should be set up pretty good for success. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the applications that I've looked at so far in the last year that I've been in United Way and under this project, I've seen a wide range of programs, and I will say none of them look the same. None of them look the same, none of their budgets were the same, none of their sustainability goals were the same, and none of their project outcomes were the same. They're all different, they all touch different areas when it comes to behavioral mental health, so I don't want you to think that maybe my program will be excluded, right? We have somebody that's basically a tech-based company that only does resource allocation. Like they only talk about resources. They only connect people to what exists currently. They work with the Resolve partners who won previously to like list their sources, right? List the resources that exist. They communicate with the community, but they also service any of them with like another collective. Folks like events that go on. There's an organization that does work similar to that, right? But it's only for community-based organizations, initiatives, and free community-based interventions, right? So things like that exist. So I don't want you to think that your program has to be super specific to providing services. It doesn't. That makes sense.
My question is about probably more related to the budget, but it is about sustainability because sometimes you need to promote it to be sustainable. How do y'all feel about marketing as a budget line?
We have an organization that works with marketing. It's called Impact Connection. I don't know if y'all or you can look them up, but Impact Connection is a marketing and tech-based company. They won one of our grants last year. And again, what they do is they advertise community-based initiatives, right? So if you just wanted to do a campaign, right? Maybe let's just use municipal destigmatization, right? And you want to roll out a campaign, you want to partner with existing organizations, maybe LBH, maybe a transportation company to expand signage in general, right? You can write something like that. If you want to just expand a digital platform and do a little bit more work as to how this platform looks better, this platform is more accessible to the community. If I want to have memberships that I include in my program, I can give out 50 memberships and offer whatever class or right? So it's no parameters for what that program looks like as long as it, again, touches our average population, you hit the budget, and you use some data from our evaluation report or our average.
Yeah, that sounds like marketing.
It
In line item, but it can be the whole budget.
It can be the whole budget, yeah. As long as, again, you're creative with wording and it touches back on our budget.
Do you prefer businesses or initiatives that already have a proven track record, or do you prefer businesses that are doing upcoming?
Yeah, everybody. So I'm just gonna throw an example out there. Crazy Plan Day, right? Okay, so I want to have some type of program to reduce violence. I want to propose that I do a program where I teach people about the therapeutic ways of planting, right? This is just a example. Yeah, so I'm just doing a therapeutic session when it comes to planting, right? I want to bring in a therapist to have a guided session while we plant, right? While I teach you about soil, while I teach you about different plants, how they grow, how to take care of them. That is a great program to write for. I've never seen a program that uses environmental justice to leverage community violence, right? It's all about how you word it. So I do a lot of wordplay there, right? But again, as long as you include some information from our evaluation report and our average population.
So something like that would be, so I know you said 30% should be personnel, or something like that, we would have to pay a therapist. So is therapist plus supplies?
Yeah, so you wouldn't write it as a therapist, right? You would write it as an honorarium, right? So somebody's coming in to provide, or you partner, like, we have connections offer that to you for free as an in-kind donation, right? And you use those funds to do some things, right? Maybe it's to buy supplies, right? You can get creative with the budget, and I'm saying that very loosely on purpose, because I'm telling you what it should look like to apply, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what it has to look like when you're actually spending funds, if that makes sense. But they're not gonna tell you that on the application, because why would I tell you that on the application, right? But again, it's a lot of wordplay, but it's intentional to fit the criteria for SAMHSA, and unintentional so that community organizations or programs that have never broadcast to the world have the opportunity to apply. That makes sense.
You mentioned the character limit. Is there like a PDF limit for data, anything like that?
No, you can submit, I've seen people submit PowerPoint decks, anything that makes your program strong, you can submit it, I think as an attachment at the very end. So even if you have a report that you develop, or some type of white paper, or some type of act, or policy change, something like that, it's good to include as much supplemental information as possible. Because again, all we have is the application to go off of. So if you only have the application, you're like, oh, this really would get the picture across as to what my program does. I'd say add a PowerPoint deck, add something that you have, add some type of pitch you already have created, because it helps us understand more. And again, think about what we do. I have no idea when it comes to behavior know what this looks like. But if you say something creative enough, and like that's actually a good idea, or like I would have my son participate in something like this, or my daughter, or I don't know, go look your organization up after they break the application. That really helps people go from this is just the application to I actually know this program is doing, I think they should get some money so they can do whatever they're doing. Right?
Is it possible for you guys to share or you share with us past successful applications?
Yeah. I probably can't show it directly, but I can talk you through like Hit Up the Rise, right? I'm only using them because they want our top five, they probably want to go. They probably won't get any more money from us, right? But Hit Up the Rise applied for our very first cycle, and I might be putting all these out there. I'll tell them I told y'all. But they applied for our first cycle, and they didn't get awarded because of those technicalities I mentioned earlier, right? So telling a story, right? It's okay that you have a story that lives on your website and you have a mission and vision statement. It's okay to refer back to those things. But when we ask about the Resolve program specifically, that's what we want to know, right? Some people are using those 500 characters to give us all the information that's already on their website. We already have access to that information. Tell us something different, right? Tell us a story in a compelling way. Tell us about somebody you worked with that had a really good success story for working with your program or working through your program, right? That's what we want to know there, but also we want to know how it aligns with Resolve, right? What does it take when it comes to resilience, when it comes to equity, when it comes to solving the issue of violence, with behavior and mental health, right? That's what we want it to tie to. So keep in mind your vision and your purpose, but don't use your 500 characters to tell us all about that. You can already put y'all's website up, or you include a date that has the same information, right? That is the only thing I will say. So their very first time applying, they did something simple. I'm actually going to use somebody totally different. I'm going to use the YMCA. The YMCA applied. Apply for this really long fun, right? The YMCA's idea going in was, I'm this big nonprofit. I already exist. People already know what we're not doing. So in their application, they actually left out a ton of content that told us how it relates directly to our Resolve grant. So I was somebody who read it, supported the grant. And to me, I'm like, I know YMCA, it's just like right at United Way. Everybody knows United Way, like I've heard the name before, I know what y'all do. But that doesn't eliminate you from being able to tell us how it directly applies to our grants, right? Because YMCA has vast programming. I don't know what y'all using that the funds for. I don't know if the funds are going to go directly to a behavior health program, right? But I do know of smaller organizations that's literally telling me how they're providing this diverse community intervention when it comes to behavior health. It's going to probably use those funds wisely. They don't have large funders like YMCA does. They don't have large access to money. They don't have these great partnerships. They have democracy, right? So how do I cater to them? How do I meet them where they are? Opposed to an organization that's already established and already has money, right? So that's kind of what we look at there. And it also separates who gets the money versus who doesn't. And I just have a couple more slides again. Some Verifying the financial, so that is a portion again, that's very top of the application, like really the first question as well. It asks about the nonprofit status, it asks about all that information. So if you are sponsoring a couple people, just make sure they have that information, or y'all put your application together to ensure they have correct information there. Moving on down the line when it comes to the application is that background piece that I mentioned earlier. So talking about the lived experiences, talking about the population you aim to serve, the influences that you guys are working with, and then those metrics. Again, they live within the Alice report and the resolve community impact report. I'll share with Kwame so he can send it to everybody that's attending tonight, so y'all have at least where you're pulling information from. Keep in mind, it's only 500 words. 500 words for 2 sections, 250 words for the other 2 sections. 4 sections in total, not including the budget, if that makes sense. Budget is very simple. Again, personnel that they ask for, programming expenses, and in-kind donations. Those are like the major sections on the budget form. So as long as you have that information, you should be good to go. The last thing I'll say is don't be afraid to apply. If you apply, you will get feedback. So even if you don't win, you will get feedback as to what people saw or errors in your project, right? That's how we get around you. We didn't start the first time. They didn't include any of the metrics when it came to the Alice papers, right? So even though everybody knows about
Yeah, this sounds like sweet.
Section 4 to the reason because we don't get the program. Right? Don't get the program that are
So,